Hey everyone, thanks for checking back into the channel. Today what I'm going to talk about is Arken Optics' new scope, the SH-4 Gen 2 J model. If you've been cruising around the internet at all or YouTube and just shopping for an affordable optic, you may have come across their new scope, this J model, and the designation of J means Japanese glass. So let's get right to it. I've got the new scope right here, and this is the 6 to 24 by 50 mil. And I've got one of the standard, we could call it just the C model, I guess, as in China, but another 6 to 24 by 50 in mil. These are identical advertised optics by Arken, aside from the J designation. So let's get right to it. What have I found about these optics? Now, I've only had this J model for a little while. I've not had it out at the gun range, and I don't think that's going to hold back my impressions of what this scope is bringing to the market by Arken too much, considering the only advertised difference is that glass. And I do have a little bit of just quick shoot through footage through the glass in my backyard. And I'm not doing a whole lot because there are some reviewers that do a much better job as far as a more scientific review of the glass. If that's your thing, check out Rex's thing. Rex does a really good job getting numerical values of the differences in the glass. I am more of going to give you your street review of the, hey, I'm the guy at the range or the guy out in the woods, and do I think this is better or not or worth it? Kind of a general everyday consensus of, hey, will this work for you? But check out Rex's stuff for those numerical things. But let's get right back to this scope. Arken has advertised this as having Japanese glass. Now I can't tell you why, but what I can tell you is the optic with the Japanese glass is advertised at $60 more. Now, that's not a lot, and it's generally less than the cost of a completely different optic if we look at other brands, going from one model to the next, whether it be Arken or some of their competitors. But $60 in many cases is not a lot of money, but if it's not a useful upgraded investment, should you buy the J model over the standard model? And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the differences that I see externally with this scope versus the advertised main difference, and that being the glass. So let's get right to this. So here's the J model, and I've got some pictures of this model with a tape measure against it, as well as the standard SH-4, we could call it the C model, the China model. And you'll notice that the J model, though this isn't advertised anywhere, the J model is actually a little bit shorter. And it seems to be that this bell area of the scope is a little bit shorter than the other optic. And as well as the ocular adjustment is a little bit thicker, offsetting that shortness there. But overall, the overall length of the scope, comparing these two, is just a smidge shorter. We're looking at a 1/4 inch or a little bit more, a little less or so, depending on which you have your adjustment at, but it is a bit shorter. As well, that length difference leads to a weight difference between these two. Now I put both of the scopes on a scale here with no battery, and the J model is about an ounce lighter. It's close to an ounce. Does that matter to anyone? Well, if you're one of those guys that you're trying to build this carbon fiber, super lightweight rifle, maybe it will matter to you. This is not a light optic, so it's probably not too many people doing that. But ounces matter if you're carrying the rifle in the field for hours and you're hunting. Now, Arken does offer another model, their EP4, their L model, which is really a better package for that. But getting back to this J model is a tad lighter, and I would attribute that to probably the housing and some of that being a little bit smaller. So that is a difference as far as some of the measurable differences that I have for you externally on these two scopes. Now, cosmetically, there are a few other things. The new J model appears to have a little bit more of a matte finish versus the satin with a very light level of shine or sheen on the standard SH-4 Gen 2. This J model is it's more charcoaled out, it seems to be, and I can't tell you if that's just mine. I have a good many of the standard SH-4 Gen 2s, and they all seem to be fairly standard as far as the finish and the color. And I expect the same with this J model. So this one does seem to have a little bit more of that satin finish. And there are some other, changes as far as, or differences. The new J model, when looking at the magnification setting numbers right here on your scope on the bell, the numbers seem to be a little bit smaller. And I thought, hey, that might not be a good thing. Larger, you can see it better. However, even though the numbers are a little bit bigger on the standard model, the J model ones seem crisper, like the lines are a little bit more clear. So I would consider that, even though it seems very, very small of a change, but I'd consider that an improvement. When we get to the parallax or the side adjustment, there is actually a change as far as that. The markings on the standard model have a little box in between some of the graduated numbers, and so does the J model. Now the J model has its first little box start at the 100 setting, and on our standard model, the little box starts at the 150. Now, I can't tell you if there were any changes as far as internally, because I do know there is some complaint that people feel the side focus or the parallax is not accurate, or that it doesn't work well in some capacity. There's some understanding and some education that needs to go with that those numbers are only there for a reference, and everyone's eye and whatnot is a little bit different. And those are there to get you close. Some of their optics, that they produce, their EP5s and whatnot, well, I'll have to think back to that. But some of the other optics actually don't even have numbers on there. They just have, this little spear. The numbers get you close. I don't know if there's changes in there. Maybe somebody from Arken can chime in. The optics themselves are supposed to be identical from what I understand as far as the tracking mechanisms and everything else inside of them. These things always have amazing 100% tracking. The turrets on both of the scopes feel identical. This is the J, and I don't know if the camera's picking that up. And this is the standard one. They feel and sound identical. So, there are these differences when I look at the standard model. And this is something I brought up with Arken because I kind of get technical when it comes to finer details on things. But this is the standard SH-4 Gen 2. And when I put my windage at 0 on this, my Arken logo is pointing towards the front or the big bell. Now, when I take my SH-4, the J model here, make sure I picked up the right one. When I put this at 0, my Arken logo is pointing up. Now, was that done intentionally? Was it an oversight? Is it a way to tell which optic that you have? I don't know, but I'm here to tell you, looking at the two scopes, when you have the windage set at 0, there is a little bit of a difference. I'm sure there are other little differences that I'm not picking up on. I know the serial number is quite large on the standard model, and on the J model, they've toned that down a little bit. But look them over and check some other things out. Other small finishes and stuff like that, differences. But, so there you have it. These optics, $339 versus $399 for the J model. $60 difference. When I look through these scopes, or when you look through these scopes, will there be a difference in the glass? Personally, I'm not so sure. I know Rex has done the tests and has more different concrete numbers as far as putting some scales and measurable, viewable things out there. We may be looking at more of the price increase related to a byproduct of supply and demand and production issues that Arken possibly was running into dealing with China over these last couple of years. Their EP8 had a heck of a delay, and possibly it had something to do with some of the manufacturing or getting supplies and whatnot from China, including glass. That I don't know. Maybe we'll learn more in the future. But what we do know is the SH-4J model is $60 more. And if you're one of the people that you feel that the Japanese are producing better glass in general, whether it be in a camera, a scope, or binoculars, or just field glasses, the consensus is yes, they do produce a higher quality glass. But in the case of this, are both of these spec'd out the same? I don't know. When I look through them, I don't so much notice the difference. So that will have to, that's got to be something you guys got to, kick around. Do you want to spend the $60 that possibly this J model has a little bit better coating? Does it have a marginally better clarity? Is it a gamble you want to take? Is it something that you need? I can say from my experience, I have a good many SH-4 Gen 2s. It is by far my most used and favorite optic from Arken Optics. And I don't feel I've had a situation, whether it's hunting or out target shooting 600 yards or even beyond, that the glass has held me back from putting a shot on target. Now, yes, the EP5 does have better glass and better clarity, and it's not a lot more money when we're looking at $399 for this one already. But again, I'm able to shoot just as well with the SH4s as I am with the EP5, minus that little bit of clarity. So you need to keep some of these things in mind. This really is the monkey wrench that Arken Optic has thrown at us. Typically, we would expect to see a completely different scope in the line with some different features and whatnot for that money, and maybe not such a close gap. I don't know if there's too many manufacturers making an optic with only a $60 jump between models. In this case, maybe we'll see the SH4 go away and only the J model stick around. I don't know. I'm just throwing darts in the wind at this point. But I hope you find this content useful. This is your comparison of the SH4 Gen 2 versus the SH4J Gen 2, or as I just call it, the J model. And you decide, is it $60 worth it for you to upgrade to Japanese glass over Chinese glass? Thanks for checking back in. I will have this on a rifle and get some more shoot through and some tracking data, but I expect a lot of that, all of that, to be right on point, really good stuff as far as equal to all the other content that I put out from the Arken Optics being on point, spot on with their tracking and everything else. Gonna cut it out here. Thanks for checking in. Get out shooting.